The morning sun cast long shadows across the Atacama Desert as Dr. Maria Santos adjusted the massive radio telescope for the third time that hour. She had been tracking the strange signals for 2 weeks now, ever since the Deep Space Monitoring Station picked up something that shouldn't exist, according to every physics textbook ever written. "Still nothing?" asked her colleague Dr. James Park as he approached with 2 steaming cups of coffee. Maria shook her head, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The signal stopped completely yesterday at 14:30 hours. Whatever was out there either moved away or the ground beneath their feet vibrated. Not an earthquake tremor, but something else entirely." Both scientists looked up at the clear morning sky and saw something that made them forget about their coffee entirely. 3 massive shapes hung motionless above Earth, each one easily the size of Manhattan. The ships, because what else could they be, gleamed like polished silver in the sunlight. No engines were visible. No exhaust trails marked their passage through the atmosphere. They simply existed, defying gravity, as if physics were merely a suggestion. Within hours, every government on Earth was in emergency session. Military satellites confirmed what ground observers already knew. The objects were artificial, clearly designed by intelligence, and completely beyond human technology. Panic spread through some populations, while others celebrated what they believed to be humanity's first contact with alien life. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the briefing room beneath NORAD, studying the images displayed on the main screen. As Earth's lead xeneology specialist and former military officer, she had been chosen to head the first contact team if this day ever came. She never imagined it would happen during her lifetime. "The objects maintain perfect geostationary positions," reported Colonel Harrison, pointing at the display. "One over the Pacific, one over Europe, one over Africa. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but the signals are heavily encrypted." "Any hostile actions?" Elena asked. "None detected. In fact, they seem to be going out of their way to appear non-threatening. Look at this." Harrison switched the display to show detailed scans of the nearest vessel. No visible weapon systems. The whole design uses curved, organic-looking lines. Even their approach was deliberately slow and predictable. Elena studied the alien ships. Graceful curves. Someone had put a lot of thought into making these vessels appear as peaceful as possible. "Any response to our communication attempts?" "That's the interesting part," said Dr. Rebecca Chen, the team's linguist. "About an hour ago, they started broadcasting in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and 37 other human languages. They want to talk." The message, when it finally came through, clearly was everything science fiction had promised, and nothing like humanity had expected. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are representatives of the Galactic Protection Alliance, a coalition of 12 species dedicated to safeguarding developing worlds throughout the galaxy. We come in peace, offering friendship and protection to your young civilization." The voice belonged to someone called High Protector Melanor, and it carried the kind of warm authority that made people want to trust it immediately. The message continued with an invitation for Earth's leaders to visit the flagship for formal first contact. Elena found herself aboard a small shuttlecraft 6 hours later, along with representatives from the United Nations, NASA, and the world's major military powers. The alien ship had provided the shuttle, a sleek, silent vehicle that moved through space as easily as a bird through air. The interior of the alien flagship surprised everyone. Instead of cold metal corridors and blinking computers, they found themselves in what looked like a cross between a cathedral and a healing center. Soft lighting emanated from the walls themselves. The air smelled faintly of flowers and carried an almost musical quality that made everyone feel calmer. "Welcome, friends from Earth," said High Protector Melanor as she approached the human delegation. Elena's first thought was that the alien had been designed by a committee whose job was to make her appear as non-threatening as possible. Melanor stood about 7 feet tall, but carried herself with a gentle grace that suggested no violence whatsoever. Her skin had a faint blue tint and seemed to glow softly from within. Her eyes were large and kind, the color of deep ocean water. When she spoke, her voice carried that same musical quality as the air around them. "I am High Protector Melanor of the Sidian people," she said, bowing slightly. "It is my honor to welcome you into the larger community of galactic civilization." Behind Melanor stood representatives of the other Alliance species. The HFY looked like living crystals that somehow moved and spoke in harmonious tones that sounded like wind chimes. The Verdani resembled walking trees with faces carved from bark, and they released calming scents that made everyone feel drowsy and peaceful. Elena introduced herself and the human delegation, trying to process everything she was seeing. These beings had clearly evolved on different worlds with different conditions. Yet, they all shared one common trait. They appeared completely harmless. "Please come with me," Meliner said, gesturing toward a large chamber, filled with comfortable seating, arranged in a circle. "We have much to discuss." The formal presentation began with a holographic display that showed the galaxy as the Alliance saw it. Thousands of star systems were marked in different colors: green for Alliance member worlds, yellow for developing civilizations under protection, red for dangerous areas to be avoided. "The galaxy is vast and filled with wonders," Meliner explained as the display rotated slowly. "But it is also filled with dangers that young civilizations like yours cannot imagine. Stellar predators that feed on the energy of entire suns. Quantum storms that can strip away a planet's atmosphere in minutes. Machine intelligences that view organic life as a resource to be harvested." Elena watched the presentation with growing interest. The threats Meliner described sounded impressive, but something about the way they were presented bothered her. The stellar predators looked more like space whales than monsters. The quantum storms appeared to be natural phenomena, like hurricanes or tornadoes. The machine intelligences seemed to be mostly automated mining operations that had lost their programming for over 2,000 years. Meliner continued, "The Alliance has protected developing worlds from these threats. We offer you the same protection we have given to 847 other species across the galaxy." The holographic display changed to show peaceful worlds under Alliance protection. Happy populations living in harmony, their needs provided for by advanced technology. No wars, no disease, no hunger. Children playing in perfect safety, while their parents worked at jobs that seemed more like hobbies than labor. "Our shield generators will surround your solar system," Meliner explained. "Nothing dangerous will be able to reach you. Our medical technology will eliminate disease and extend your lifespans far beyond what you currently experience. Our food synthesis systems will end hunger forever. Our educational programs will help your people reach their full potential." Elena noticed that Dr. Chen was taking extensive notes, but Colonel Harrison looked uncomfortable. The military representatives were exchanging glances that suggested they had questions. "The process is simple," Meliner said, her warm smile never wavering. "You need only accept our guidance and allow us to relocate any problematic populations to safer worlds, where they can be properly cared for." "Problematic populations?" Helena asked. "Some civilizations develop certain aggressive tendencies during their evolution," Meliner explained gently. "These individuals often have difficulty adapting to peaceful galactic society. We have special facilities where they can live comfortably while learning to control their violent impulses." Elena felt a chill despite the warm flower-scented air. "And if they don't want to be relocated?" Melinor's expression remained kind, but something flickered behind her large eyes. "The safety of the majority must always take precedence over the desires of a few, Captain Vasquez. Surely you understand this principle from your own military experience." The presentation continued for another hour, covering everything from trade agreements to cultural exchange programs. The Alliance had clearly done this many times before. Every question the humans asked had been anticipated. Every concern had a prepared answer. But Elena noticed something interesting. While Meliner spoke about protection and guidance, she never mentioned partnership or equality. The relationship being offered was clearly that of parent to child, protector to protected. Humanity would be safe, but they would not be free. When the presentation finally ended, Meliner looked expectantly at the human delegation. "Do you have any questions about our offer?" Elena glanced at her colleagues and saw her own thoughts reflected in their faces. This was the moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. She could accept the Alliance's protection and condemn her species to eternal childhood, or she could ask the questions that were burning in her mind. "High Protector," Elena said carefully, "we appreciate your generous offer, but I have to ask, what exactly are you protecting us from that's so dangerous we need to give up our independence?" Melinor's smile faltered slightly. Several of the other alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. "The galaxy is full of terrors," Captain Melanor said, her voice carrying a note of condescension. "Threats that your primitive technology could never hope to address. Your species has barely left its own solar system. You fight with chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles like children playing with dangerous toys." Elena felt her colleagues tense behind her. Dr. Chen stopped taking notes. Colonel Harrison's hand moved unconsciously toward where his sidearm would normally rest. "So, stellar predators, quantum storms, and rogue mining equipment," Elena said, her voice remaining perfectly calm. "That's it. Dangerous weather and some broken machines. I assure you, these threats are far more serious than we were hoping for something more challenging," Elena interrupted. And for the first time since boarding the alien ship, she smiled. It wasn't a particularly warm smile. In fact, there was something predatory about it that made several of the Alliance representatives take an unconscious step backward. Elena had spent 15 years in military service before joining the xenobiology program, and some habits died hard. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Elena continued, her smile growing wider. "You see, High Protector, you've been looking at this situation backwards. You're worried about protecting us from the galaxy's dangers. What you should be asking is whether the galaxy needs protection from us." The silence that followed was broken only by the musical humming of the ship systems. Melanor stared at Elena with an expression that suggested she was seeing humans clearly for the first time. "Captain Vasquez," Melanor said slowly, "surely you don't mean to suggest that your species poses a threat to galactic civilization?" Elena's smile never wavered. "High Protector, we've been imagining scary scenarios and building weapons to fight them since before we discovered fire. The only difference is that now we know we're not alone in the universe." She stood up, followed by the rest of the human delegation. "We'll need some time to consider your generous offer. In the meantime, perhaps you'd like to review some of our own technical specifications, just so you understand what you're dealing with." Dr. Chen activated a small device that transmitted a data package to the Alliance ship's computers. The information contained detailed analyses of human military capabilities, theoretical weapon systems, and strategic doctrines that had been developed over millennia of constant warfare. As the alien representatives began reading the data, their expressions changed from confusion to concern to something approaching fear. "The thing is," Elena said as she headed toward the exit, "you've spent 2,000 years protecting species from external threats. Humans spent most of our history being the threat." The last thing she heard as the shuttle bay doors closed behind them was the sound of Alliance representatives arguing in several different alien languages, their musical voices carrying notes of panic and discord. During the flight back to Earth, Elena stared out at the three massive alien ships, hanging motionless in the sky, and wondered what humanity's response would ultimately be. The Alliance offered safety and comfort in exchange for freedom and independence. It was the same bargain countless species had accepted across the galaxy, but humans had never been particularly good at accepting other people's definitions of safety. As the shuttle touched down at the secure facility in Nevada, Elena made a mental note to recommend that Earth's response include a complete inventory of human weapons capabilities, not as a threat, but as a courtesy. After all, it was only polite to let the Alliance know exactly what they were dealing with. 2 weeks had passed since first contact, and the 3 Alliance ships still hung motionless above Earth, like silver monuments to humanity's new place in the galaxy. Every news channel on the planet ran constant coverage of the great decision that world leaders were supposedly making in secret sessions. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the underground command center beneath Geneva, watching real-time feeds from a dozen different monitoring stations. The aliens had been patient so far, but their daily requests for humanity's answer were becoming more frequent and more pointed. "The analysis teams have finished their reports," said Dr. James Chen, Elena's new science advisor. He was Dr. Rebecca Chen's brother and had been pulled from his position at MIT to help evaluate Alliance technology. "You're going to want to see this." Elena accepted the thick folder with some reluctance. Reading technical reports had never been her favorite part of leadership, but the last 2 weeks had taught her that every detail mattered when dealing with species that had been manipulating galactic politics for over 2 millennia. "The short version," James said, settling into a chair across from her desk, "is that Alliance technology is impressive, but not revolutionary. Their ships use gravity manipulation for propulsion, which is beyond us right now. But their weapons and defensive systems are actually quite limited. Limited how? They're designed exclusively for non-lethal suppression. Energy fields that disable rather than destroy. Weapons that incapacitate rather than kill. It's like they've never encountered an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with or sedated into submission. Elena flipped through pages of technical diagrams and analysis charts. What about their protection protocols? The operations they've conducted to defend other species? James grimaced. That's where it gets interesting. We requested historical data on Alliance military operations, under the guise of wanting to understand what we'd be protected from. They gave us everything. Detailed records of 847 successful integrations over the past 2,000 years. And their success rate is terrible. When the Alliance protects a species, they win about 77% of the time. The other 23% result in what they call unfortunate relocations. Entire planetary populations moved to safer worlds that happen to be rich in resources the Alliance needs. Elena sat down the folder and leaned back in her chair. They're not protectors. They're farmers. That's essentially our conclusion. Yes, they find developing species, offer protection, and either succeed in making them dependent clients, or fail and harvest their populations and resources. Either way, the Alliance benefits. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Elena's assistant appeared on the wall screen with an expression of barely controlled excitement. Captain High Protector Mellon is requesting another meeting. She says the Alliance Council is eager to finalize the protection agreement. Tell her we'll be happy to meet, Elena said, but this time we want to tour their facilities and observe their protection protocols in action. Full transparency. 3 hours later, Elena found herself aboard the Alliance flagship again. But this time, she wasn't alone. The human delegation had grown to include military analysts, xenobiologists, computer specialists, and to the aliens' obvious discomfort, several weapons experts. Commander Sarah Torres had been Elena's choice to lead the military assessment team. Sarah had spent 12 years in special operations before joining the Space Force, and she had a talent for seeing tactical weaknesses that others missed. She also had an unsettling way of smiling that made people nervous. "Welcome back, Captain Vasquez," Meliner said, as she greeted the expanded human delegation. "I must admit, your request for operational transparency is somewhat unusual. Most species are content to accept our assurances of protection. Most species probably haven't spent their entire evolutionary history fighting each other." Elena replied pleasantly. "We like to understand exactly what we're getting into." Mellon's expression suggested she was beginning to understand that humans were not like other species she had encountered. "Very well. I will personally guide you through our defensive capabilities and show you recordings of recent protection operations." The tour began in what the Alliance called their Strategic Operations Center, a vast chamber filled with holographic displays showing real-time data from across the galaxy. Hundreds of star systems were monitored constantly, with threat assessments updated continuously by advanced artificial intelligence. "Impressive," said Dr. Lisa Park, the team's computer specialist, as she studied the information displays. "How often do you actually engage these threats?" "Fortunately, most can be deterred through diplomatic means," explained Zethar, a crystalline Zephi, who served as the Alliance's military coordinator. His voice sounded like wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. "When diplomacy fails, we implement containment protocols." Sarat stepped closer to examine the tactical displays. "Containment protocols. We establish defensive perimeters around threatened areas and deploy suppression fields to disable aggressive forces," Zethar said proudly. "Our technology allows us to neutralize threats without causing unnecessary destruction." "Show us," Sarah said simply. What followed was a series of holographic recordings showing Alliance forces in action against various galactic threats. Elena watched with growing amazement as the aliens fought like they were trying to solve a humanitarian crisis rather than win a war. In the first recording, Alliance ships faced off against something called a stellar predator, a massive creature that fed on solar radiation. The Alliance response was to surround the creature with energy fields and guide it away from inhabited systems using what appeared to be sophisticated herding techniques. "Remarkable," said Dr. James Chen. "How long did this operation take?" Approximately 6 weeks, Zathar replied. We had to be careful not to harm the creature as stellar predators are an endangered species. 6 weeks, Sarah repeated, her voice carefully neutral. To deal with one animal, the second recording showed Alliance forces engaging a swarm of automated mining ships that had somehow lost their programming and begun consuming inhabited asteroids. The Alliance response was to board each ship individually and attempt to reprogram their control systems. This operation required 4 months to complete, Zathar noted. Unfortunately, we were unable to save 3 of the asteroid colonies before restoring proper programming to the mining fleet. Elena watched Sarah's face carefully and saw something that worried her. Sarah was smiling, but it was the kind of smile she had worn during combat briefings in Afghanistan, the expression of a predator analyzing prey. Could we see some of your less successful operations? Elena asked. The ones that resulted in relocations. Melanor and Zathar exchanged glances before calling up new recordings. These showed Alliance forces attempting to protect worlds from threats they couldn't contain or redirect. The patterns were consistent. The Alliance would deploy defensive measures, attempt diplomatic solutions, and gradually fall back as their gentle methods proved inadequate. The Vorthon situation was particularly challenging, Melanor explained, as they watched Alliance ships retreating from a swarm of aggressive biomechanical entities. The Vorin collective refused all diplomatic contact and seemed determined to consume organic matter for some unknown purpose. What happened to the Vorin? Elena asked. We were forced to relocate the entire species to a secure facility where they could be properly studied and hopefully rehabilitated, Melanor said sadly. It was a tragic necessity. Commander Torres leaned forward, studying the tactical display with professional interest. How many Vorthon were there originally? Approximately 4 billion individuals across 12 worlds. And how many survived the relocation? Melanor hesitated. The relocation process is difficult for some species to adapt to. Perhaps 40 million Vorthon are currently in our care. Sarah's smile disappeared entirely. You killed 90% of their population and called it a rescue operation. We saved who we could. Zathar's musical voice carried a note of distress. The alternative was to allow the collective to spread throughout the sector, consuming everything in their path. Or you could have just destroyed them, Sarah said. Matter-of-factly, quick, clean, permanent solution. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of the ship's systems. Every Alliance representative in the room was staring at Sarah with expressions of horror. Commander Torres, Melanor said carefully, surely you don't mean to suggest that genocide is preferable to relocation. I'm suggesting that if you're going to kill 4 billion people anyway, you should be honest about it, Sarah replied. At least genocide is quick. Elena decided it was time to intervene before Sarah said something that ended negotiations entirely. What Commander Torres is pointing out is that your methods seem designed to make you feel better about the outcome. Rather than actually protecting the species involved, we save who we can, Melanor insisted. We are not warriors, Captain Vasquez. Violence is not in our nature. No, Elena agreed. But it's in ours. She activated a portable display device and called up the files that Earth's military analysts had prepared over the past 2 weeks. Since you showed us your operations, let us show you how humans would handle the same situations. The first file was a tactical analysis of the stellar predator incident. Human weapons experts had identified 17 different ways to either kill or permanently relocate the creature in less than 48 hours. Methods ranged from gravity weapons that would drag the predator into a nearby black hole to exotic matter bombs that would disrupt its ability to process solar radiation. These solutions are unnecessarily violent, Zathar protested. The stellar predator is a living being. So are the billions of people on the worlds it threatens, said Dr. Park. We prioritize the lives of civilized beings over the lives of animals. The second file showed human solutions for the automated mining problem. Rather than attempting to reprogram each ship individually, human strategies involved using electromagnetic pulse weapons to disable the entire fleet simultaneously, then either reprogramming them en masse or simply destroying them and building new mining equipment. Time to resolution 6 hours, Elena noted. Casualties, 0. The third file was Sarah's analysis of the Vorthon collective situation. Her solution was brutally simple. Deploy thermonuclear weapons to sterilize all 12 Voron worlds simultaneously, ensuring that the aggressive biomechanical entities could never spread beyond their home system. Total time to resolution 30 minutes, Sarah said. Collateral damage minimal. Long-term threat to galactic civilization eliminated. Meliner stared at the tactical displays with what Elena could only describe as horrified fascination. You would commit genocide to solve a military problem. We would eliminate an existential threat to galactic civilization, Elena corrected. The Voron collective was consuming organic matter and spreading to new worlds. They had to be stopped. Your method resulted in the deaths of 4 billion Vorthan and left 40 million of them imprisoned in your facilities. Our method would have resulted in the deaths of 4 billion Vorthon and guaranteed that the threat never spread beyond their home system. But the survivors, what kind of life are they living in your facilities? Sarah asked. Are they free? Are they happy? Are they still really Voron? Or are they just prisoners you've convinced yourself you're helping? The Alliance representatives had no answer for that. Dr. Chen activated another display showing humanity's theoretical weapons development over the past 50 years. The thing you need to understand about humans is that we've been preparing for hostile contact since we first started looking at the stars. We have contingency plans for fighting hive minds, swarm intelligences, energy beings, machine intelligences, and things we haven't even encountered yet. We've been imagining scary scenarios and building weapons to fight them for centuries, Elena added. Not because we're violent by nature, but because we learned early in our history that the universe doesn't care about your good intentions. The tour continued for several more hours, but the mood had shifted dramatically. Alliance representatives showed human delegates their food synthesis technology, their medical systems, and their educational programs with obvious pride, but they kept glancing nervously at the weapons experts who accompanied the group. As the EAT tour concluded, Meliner made one final attempt to emphasize the benefits of Alliance protection. Think of what we're offering you, Captain Vasquez. Perfect safety, unlimited resources, guidance from species with thousands of years more experience than you. Why would you choose the uncertainties of independence over the security we provide? Elena considered the question carefully before answering. Because security without freedom isn't security at all, High Protector. It's just a comfortable cage. She gathered her team and headed toward the shuttle bay, but paused at the doorway. We'll have an answer for you soon, but I think you should prepare yourselves for the possibility that humanity might have a different vision for galactic civilization than what you're used to. During the flight back to Earth, Sarah Torres reviewed the intelligence they had gathered. They're not evil, she concluded. They're just incompetent. 2,000 years of practice, and they still fight like they're afraid of hurting the bad guys. The question is, Elena said, what do we do about it? Sarah's predatory smile returned. We show them how it's really done. The emergency meeting was called at 03:47 hours Geneva time. Elena Vasquez had been asleep for exactly 90 minutes when her secure communicator began screaming with priority alerts from Alliance monitoring stations across 3 different sectors of the galaxy. Talk to me, she said, pulling on her uniform as she strode toward the command center. The corridors beneath the UN complex were normally quiet at this hour, but tonight they buzzed with activity as analysts and specialists rushed to their posts. Dr. James Chen met her at the command center entrance, his face grim. The Alliance is in trouble, big trouble. Something called the Skoran Empire has been launching coordinated attacks across Alliance territory for the past 6 hours. Elena stepped into the main operations room and immediately understood why everyone looked so worried. The massive display showed a 3-dimensional map of Alliance space, with red warning indicators, spreading like cancer across multiple sectors. How bad is it? She asked. 12 Alliance worlds under direct attack, reported Commander Torres from her position at the tactical station. Another 37 have gone dark completely. Alliance Fleet Command is requesting emergency assistance from all member species and protectorates. Elena studied the tactical display with growing concern. The attacks weren't random. They followed a clear pattern that suggested extensive planning and coordination. Whoever these Skorans were, they understood Alliance weaknesses better than the Alliance understood them themselves. What do we know about the Skoran Empire? That's the interesting part. said Dr. Lisa Park, pulling up intelligence files on her workstation. According to Alliance records, the Scorans were classified as a developing militaristic species approximately 50 years ago. The Alliance has been monitoring them ever since, waiting for them to become a threat worth addressing. Apparently, they became a threat, Elena observed dryly. It gets worse, James said, activating additional displays. Alliance fleet doctrine is based on their historical experience with galactic threats, stellar predators, rogue mining equipment, quantum storms. They're not equipped to fight an organized military force that actually wants to win. Elena watched real-time feeds from Alliance ships engaging Scoran forces. The alien tactics were exactly what she had observed during their facility tour. Defensive formations, designed to minimize casualties, non-lethal suppression fields, attempts at diplomatic contact, even while under fire. The Scorans, by contrast, fought like they were trying to exterminate their enemies as quickly and efficiently as possible. Their ships moved in aggressive formations, concentrated overwhelming firepower on single targets, and showed no interest in capturing or converting Alliance forces. How are the Alliance forces holding up? They're not, Torres said bluntly. Casualty reports are sketchy, but it looks like they're losing approximately 3 ships for every Score vessel they manage to disable. And that's assuming they're actually disabling Scoran ships, rather than just making them angry. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. Elena wasn't surprised to see High Protector Miner's face appear on the main screen, though the alien leader looked far less composed than she had during their previous meetings. Captain Vasquez, Miner said, her musical voice carrying notes of strain and exhaustion. I hope you will forgive the urgency of this communication, but circumstances have evolved beyond our initial projections. We're monitoring the situation, Elena replied carefully. How can we help? Relief flickered across Milaner's features. The Alliance Council has voted to grant Earth provisional membership status immediately, with full protection rights and obligations. We could use any assistance your people might be able to provide. Elena glanced at her staff before responding. What kind of assistance are you looking for? Evacuation support primarily. Our priority is saving as many lives as possible from the affected worlds. Your ships could help transport refugees to safer locations, while our fleet focuses on containing the Scoran advance. Commander Torres leaned forward, studying the tactical displays with professional interest. High Protector, what's your current assessment of Scoran military capabilities? They appear to be more advanced than our initial evaluation suggested, Meliner admitted. Their weapon systems are designed for maximum destruction rather than suppression. They show no interest in diplomatic resolution or peaceful coexistence. Most disturbing of all, they seem to view the conflict as entertainment. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Entertainment. Scoring communications intercepts suggest they are competing among themselves to see who can cause the most destruction in the shortest time. They appear to consider our defensive strategies amusing rather than effective. The implications of that statement settled over the command center like a cold fog. Elena had encountered enemies who fought for resources, territory, ideology, or survival. But enemies who fought for fun were something else entirely. High Protector, Elena said carefully. What exactly is the Alliance's long-term strategy for dealing with this threat? Meliner hesitated before answering. We are adapting our protocols to address this unprecedented situation. Our xenobiologists are developing psychological profiles of Scorn leadership to identify potential diplomatic solutions. Our engineers are working on enhanced suppression technologies that might be more effective against their aggression. Our logistics specialists are calculating optimal evacuation routes for threatened populations. Elena translated that in her head. They had no idea what they were doing. In the meantime, Meliner continued, any assistance Earth could provide with refugee evacuation would be greatly appreciated. The Scorans seem particularly focused on populated worlds, and civilian casualties are mounting rapidly. Elena looked around the command center at her staff. Torres was practically vibrating with suppressed energy, like a hunting dog that had caught a scent. Dr. Chen was already pulling up files on human fleet capabilities. Park was running simulations on her workstation with the intensity of someone solving a particularly challenging puzzle. High Protector, Elena said. Evacuation support is certainly something we can provide. But I have to ask, Have you considered alternatives to containment and evacuation? What alternatives? Elimination of the threat. Melanor's expression shifted to one of confusion mixed with something that might have been horror. Captain Vasquez, surely you're not suggesting that we engage in aggressive warfare against the Scoran Empire. I'm suggesting that sometimes the best defense is a good offense, Elena replied. If the Scorans are fighting for entertainment, then make the fight boring. If they're competing for destruction scores, change the rules of the game. I don't understand. Commander Torres stepped forward, her predatory smile making its reappearance. What Captain Vasquez is suggesting, High Protector, is that instead of playing defense and hoping the Scorans get bored, you eliminate their ability to threaten anyone ever again. But that would require war, Elena finished. Real war. Not the polite conflicts you're used to managing, but the kind of war that humans have been perfecting for thousands of years. Melanor was quiet for several long moments. Elena could see her struggling with concepts that probably violated every principle Alliance civilization was built on. The Alliance Council would never approve such an approach. Melanor said finally, "We are protectors, not aggressors." "And how's that working out for you?" Torres asked bluntly. Before Melanor could respond, new alerts began flashing across the tactical displays. Dr. Park cursed quietly as she interpreted the incoming data. 3 more Alliance worlds just went dark, Park reported. Barn forces are advancing faster than projected. At this rate, they'll reach core Alliance territory within 72 hours. Elena made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. High Protector, what if Earth handled the military response while the Alliance focused on evacuation and humanitarian support? I don't understand. Let us fight the Scorans. You save the civilians. We eliminate the threat. Melanor stared at Elena through the communication link with an expression of complete bewilderment. Captain Vasquez, Earth has never engaged in interstellar warfare. Your fleet consists of what? Perhaps a dozen ships. Elena's smile was just as predatory as Torres. High Protector, you might be surprised by what Earth has been building while you've been negotiating our protection agreement. She activated the Command Sense main display and called up files that had been classified above Alliance security clearance until this moment. The display showed Earth's actual military capabilities, not the primitive chemical rockets and kinetic weapons that humanity had allowed the Alliance to observe, but the true extent of human weapons development over the past 50 years. This is the CSV Indomitable, Elena said, highlighting the lead ship in humanity's real fleet. Mass 2 million tons. Primary armament, gravimetric compression cannon, capable of generating localized black holes. Secondary armament, quantum disruption, torpedoes that destabilize matter at the subatomic level. Defensive systems include adaptive armor that learns from incoming attacks, and barrier fields that can deflect relativistic projectiles. The display scrolled through additional ship specifications. While Melanor watched in growing amazement, humanity's actual fleet consisted of over 200 ships, each one designed according to principles that made Alliance vessels look like children's toys by comparison. How is this possible? Melanor whispered. Your technology was classified as barely post-industrial. We let you classify it that way, Elena explained. Humans learned a long time ago that it's better to be underestimated than to be seen as a threat before you're ready. Ready for what? Elena's expression grew serious. Ready to meet a hostile universe on equal terms. Dr. Chen activated additional displays showing human weapons technology that the Alliance had never suspected existed. Antimatter bombs capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Nanoscale weapons that could disassemble enemy ships at the molecular level. Mimetic warfare devices designed to attack artificial intelligences through their own communication networks. We've been preparing for first contact scenarios for over a century, Elena continued. Peaceful cooperation was always our preferred option, but we developed contingencies for every other possibility we could imagine, including hostile empires that fight for entertainment, Torres added cheerfully. Melanor struggled to process what she was seeing. This level of weapons development, it would require centuries of constant warfare to perfect such technologies. Humans have had centuries of constant warfare, Elena pointed out. We just recently figured out how to stop fighting each other long enough to focus on external threats. The command center was quiet, except for the soft humming of computer systems, and the distant sound of activity in the corridors outside. Elena watched Mel Honor's face as the alien leader tried to reconcile her understanding of humanity with the evidence being presented. "Captain Vasquez," Mel Honor said finally, "if Earth possesses this level of military capability, why did you not simply reject our protection offer immediately?" Elena's smile softened slightly. "Because we wanted to understand who you really were before we decided what to do about you. The Alliance isn't evil, High Protector. You're just naive. You've been playing at warfare for 2,000 years, while humans have been perfecting it. And now you have a choice. Let us handle the Scoran problem while you focus on what you do best, helping people and building peaceful societies. Or continue trying to fight a war you don't understand against enemies who think your methods are hilarious." Melanor was quiet for a long time before responding. "What would you require from the Alliance?" "Information about Scoran positions and capabilities, coordination with your evacuation efforts, and formal authorization to engage in unrestricted warfare against the Scoran Empire." Unrestricted warfare. Elena's expression grew cold. "High Protector, if humans are going to war, we're going to win, whatever it takes, however long it takes, by whatever means necessary. The Scorans want to play games with galactic civilization. Fine, but they're about to learn that humans don't play games when innocent lives are at stake." The transmission ended with Melanor promising to present Earth's offer to the Alliance Council immediately. Elena knew the answer would be yes. The Alliance was out of options, and running out of time. "Torres," she said, turning to her military commander, "how long before we can have the fleet ready for deployment?" Torres's predatory smile was back in full force. "The fleet's been ready since the day those Alliance ships showed up in our sky. Captain, we just need coordinates and authorization." Elena looked around the command center at her staff, scientists and soldiers who had spent their careers preparing for this moment, without knowing if it would ever come. "Then let's go show the galaxy how humans really fight." The first human warship to engage Scoran forces was the CSV Retribution, a heavy cruiser that had been conducting navigation exercises near the Kepler system when the Alliance distress call came through. Captain Marcus Webb received authorization to engage 47 minutes before his ship detected the energy signatures of Scoran vessels approaching the civilian colony on Kepler Prime. "All stations, this is the captain," Webb announced over the ship's communication system. "We are about to engage hostile forces threatening Alliance civilians. This is not a drill. This is not a peacekeeping operation. This is war, and we will conduct ourselves accordingly." The crew of the Retribution had trained for this moment for years, but none of them had ever fired a shot in anger at an alien target. That was about to change. "Tactical. What are we looking at?" Webb asked as his ship moved into optimal firing position. 12 Scoran assault vessels approaching Kepler Prime from multiple vectors, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the tactical station. "Alliance defenders are falling back. Colonial evacuation is approximately 30% complete." Webb studied the tactical display showing Alliance ships attempting to shield the evacuation transports, while Scoran forces closed in from all sides. The alien ships moved with the predatory grace of sharks circling wounded prey. "Their formation suggests they're planning to herd the evacuation ships into a kill zone," Kim continued. "Alliance defensive positions won't hold for more than 20 minutes. Time to intercept 18 minutes at current speed." Webb made a decision that would define humanity's role in galactic warfare. All ahead flank battle stations, load gravimetric compression rounds, and prepare quantum disruption torpedoes for immediate deployment. The Retribution accelerated toward the battle zone with a velocity that would have been impossible for any ship using conventional propulsion. Human gravity manipulation technology was decades ahead of anything the Alliance possessed, and the Scorans were about to learn that the hard way. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, Alliance Fleet Captain Heithel watched his defensive formation crumble under Scoran assault. The crystal-based alien had commanded protection fleets for over 40 years, but he had never faced enemies who seemed to enjoy the destruction they caused. "Sir, Scoran forces are concentrating fire on evacuation transports," reported his tactical officer. "They're ignoring our warships entirely." Hithlock felt his crystalline structure resonate with frustration. The Scorans weren't trying to defeat Alliance forces. They were trying to maximize civilian casualties for some incomprehensible reason. Every standard defensive doctrine he had ever learned was useless against enemies who preferred to kill non-combatants, rather than engage military targets. All ships maintained defensive screens around evacuation transports, he ordered. Accept whatever casualties necessary to protect civilian vessels. That was when the CSV Retribution arrived. He locked sensors detected the human ship 3 seconds before it opened fire, and what happened next defied every principle of civilized warfare he had ever studied. Instead of hailing the Scorn forces or attempting to establish communication, the human ship simply began killing them. The first Choron vessel died when a gravimetric compression round created a localized gravitational anomaly that collapsed, its hull into a sphere roughly the size of a basketball. The second died when quantum disruption torpedoes destabilized the molecular bonds holding its armor together, causing the ship to simply disintegrate into component atoms. The remaining Scorn vessels turned to engage this new threat, and Captain Webb showed them why humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Tactical Pattern Delta 7, Webb ordered. Maximum aggression, no survivors. The Retribution moved through the Scorn formation like a predator among prey, its weapon systems operating with mechanical precision. Gravimetric rounds crushed ships into impossibly dense spheres. Quantum torpedoes dissolved armor like acid. Anti-atter missiles created brief stars that consumed everything within a 10-kilometer radius. But the most terrifying aspect of the human attack wasn't the weapons. It was the methodology. The Retribution didn't fight like the Alliance ships using defensive formations and suppression fields. It fought like humanity had always fought, to kill enemies as quickly and efficiently as possible. Human vessel, this is Alliance Captain Hethlock, came the transmission from the Alliance flagship. We appreciate your assistance, but your weapon systems appear to be set for lethal force. Alliance protocols require Alliance protocols are suspended. Webb replied curtly. This is a combat zone, not a peacekeeping operation. Hethlock watched in fascination and horror as the human ship eliminated the remaining Scorn vessels in less than 14 minutes. The efficiency was remarkable. The casual brutality was disturbing. Human Captain Hethlock transmitted as the last Scorn ship exploded into expanding plasma. Your assistance was effective. However, Alliance doctrine requires that we attempt to capture enemy personnel for interrogation and possible rehabilitation. Webb's response was delivered in a tone that made Hethlock's crystalline structure resonate with unease. Captain Hethlock, the Scorns came here to kill civilians for entertainment. They forfeited any right to consideration the moment they opened fire on evacuation transports. But surely some accommodation could have been made. No accommodation, Webb interrupted. No mercy, no second chances. When humans go to war, we fight to win. The exchange was recorded and transmitted to Alliance Fleet Command, where it was analyzed by xenobiologists, military strategists, and political scientists, who struggled to understand the implications of what they had witnessed. Humans didn't just fight differently than other species. They thought about warfare in fundamentally alien ways. Where Alliance forces saw enemies to be contained or redirected, humans saw problems to be solved permanently. Word of the Kepler engagement spread through Alliance communication networks within hours. But the real revelation came when human fleet deployments began appearing throughout Scorn-threatened space. Admiral Rebecca Cross commanded the human task force assigned to the Vega sector, where Scorn forces had been conducting what they called efficiency competitions, contests to see which scoring captain could eliminate the most Alliance personnel in the shortest time. Cross studied the tactical reports from her flagship, the CSV Indomitable, and felt the cold fury that had sustained human warriors throughout history. The Scorans had turned warfare into a game, treating the deaths of billions of sentient beings as entertainment. Admiral, reported her tactical officer, Commander Lisa Park. Scoran fleet composition consists of 47 vessels, arranged in 7 hunting packs. They're moving through Alliance space, in a pattern designed to maximize civilian casualties, rather than territorial control. Cross nodded grimly. The Scorans weren't trying to conquer Alliance territory. They were conducting what amounted to a massive hunting expedition. The distinction was important because it meant traditional defensive strategies were useless. Fleet composition? Cross asked 41 human warships across all classes. Additionally, Alliance Command has attached 16 of their vessels to our task force as support units. Cross activated the fleet communication system and addressed the combined human alliance force under her command. All ships, this is Admiral Cross. We are about to engage enemies who have chosen to treat warfare as entertainment. They hunt civilians for sport and compete among themselves for kill scores. This ends now. She paused, letting her words sink. In among crews that represented two completely different philosophies of warfare. Alliance vessels will provide humanitarian support and evacuation assistance. Human vessels will eliminate the threat. No quarter will be given. No prisoners will be taken. The Scoran Empire has declared war on civilization itself, and we will respond accordingly. The battle for the Vega sector began 6 hours later, when Scoran hunters encountered Cross's fleet near a civilian space station housing over 2 million refugees. The Scorans had been planning to destroy the station as part of their competition, but they found something they hadn't expected. Enemies who fought back. Human tactics confused the Scorans initially. Instead of forming defensive screens around civilian targets, human ships spread out in aggressive formations, designed to bring maximum firepower to bear on enemy vessels. Instead of trying to disable or capture Scoran ships, humans simply destroyed them as quickly as possible. The first Scoran hunting pack died within minutes of contact. Gravimetric weapons crushed their ships like insects. Quantum torpedoes dissolved their armor. Antimatter missiles created brief suns that consumed everything nearby. But the most disturbing aspect of human warfare from the Scorn perspective was the complete absence of sporting behavior. Humans didn't fight for glory or entertainment. They fought to eliminate threats. They showed no interest in fair combat or honorable victory. They simply killed enemies with industrial efficiency. Human Admiral transmitted Scoran Fleet Commander Vexthar from his flagship. Your tactics lack artistic merit. Where is the challenge in simply destroying opponents without allowing them opportunity for retaliation? Cross's response was delivered in a tone that carried the weight of human history. Commander Vexar, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed warfare was a game. For humans, war is a job, and we're very good at our jobs. What followed was the systematic destruction of Scoran forces throughout the Vega sector. Human ships hunted in coordinated groups using sensor networks that tracked every Scoran vessel simultaneously. When they found enemy forces, they eliminated them completely before moving on to the next target. The Scorans quickly discovered that their competition-based approach to warfare was useless against enemies who treated killing as a professional responsibility, rather than entertainment. Human crews worked with the mechanical precision of factory workers processing targets with efficient brutality. They don't fight, transmitted one Scoran captain before his ship was destroyed by quantum torpedoes. They simply execute. Admiral Cross monitored the tactical displays from her command center, watching red enemy contacts disappear one by one as her fleet systematically cleared Scoran forces from Alliance base. The operation was proceeding exactly according to plan. Admiral reported Commander Park, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Scoran vessels. They're requesting safe conduct to neutral territory. Cross considered the request for exactly 3 seconds. Negative. They came here to hunt civilians for sport. They don't get to surrender when they realize they're outmatched. Ma'am, Alliance protocols suggest. Alliance protocols are suspended, Cross said firmly. This is human space now, and human rules apply. The Scorans wanted to play war games. With civilian lives now, they get to experience real war. The battle for Vega sector concluded with the complete elimination of Scoran forces in the area. No enemy ships escaped. No prisoners were taken. The threat was simply removed, like a surgeon excising a tumor. Alliance observers struggled to process what they had witnessed. Human warfare wasn't just more effective than Alliance methods. It was fundamentally different in every possible way. Where Alliance forces fought to contain and redirect threats, humans fought to eliminate them entirely. They don't fight like any species we've encountered, reported Alliance Captain Hithlock in his after-action summary. They fight like they've been preparing for war with the universe itself. News of human military effectiveness spread through Alliance space faster than official reports could be filed. Civilian populations in threatened systems began requesting human protection specifically, while Alliance military commanders struggled to adapt their thinking to accommodate allies who considered total warfare a professional skill. But the real shock came when intelligence reports revealed the true scope of human military preparation. Earth's fleet hadn't been hastily assembled in response to the Scoran threat. It had been building for decades, waiting for exactly this kind of situation. "They've been ready for us," High Protector Melanor reported to the Alliance Council in an emergency session. "Not just ready for the Scorans or any specific threat. Ready for any threat that might emerge from galactic space. They've been preparing for hostile contact since before they developed faster-than-light travel." The implications of that revelation settled over the Council like a cold fog. Humanity hadn't stumbled into effective warfare through desperation or accident. They had been systematically preparing to fight enemies they had never met, using principles that most peaceful species found incomprehensible. "The question," Melanor continued, "is what we do with allies who are more effective at warfare than we are comfortable with." Before anyone could answer, priority alerts began flashing across the Council chamber's displays. Long-range sensors had detected massive Scoran fleet movements in the galactic core, not retreating, but concentrating for what appeared to be a final overwhelming assault on Alliance territory. The Scorans had apparently decided that humanity represented an unacceptable challenge to their entertainment-based approach to warfare. They were gathering their full military might for a confrontation that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Admiral Cross received the intelligence update while her fleet was resupplying at a civilian station in the Vega sector. The report confirmed what human strategic planners had been expecting. The Scorans were escalating rather than retreating. "Ma'am," reported Commander Park, "Alliance Command is requesting immediate conference with human fleet commanders. They want to coordinate defensive strategies for the incoming Scoran offensive." Cross smiled grimly as she studied the tactical projections. "Tell Alliance Command that defensive strategies won't be necessary. We're not going to wait for the Scorans to attack. Ma'am, Commander, send a message to Earth Command. Request immediate deployment of the full battle fleet. We're going to end this war before it gets any worse." Park stared at her admiral with something approaching awe. "Ma'am, are you suggesting we take the offensive against the entire Scoran Empire?" Cross's smile was the kind that had preceded every major human military victory throughout history. "Commander, I'm suggesting we show the galaxy what humans really do to enemies who threaten innocent people. We're going to demonstrate why Earth's protection comes with a lifetime guarantee. The largest fleet in human history, assembled at the edge of Scoran space. Over 300 warships representing every advance in military technology that Earth had developed since first looking at the stars." Admiral Rebecca Cross stood on the bridge of the CSV Indomitable, watching deployment patterns that had been planned by strategists who understood that this battle would determine humanity's place in galactic civilization. "Fleet status report," Cross requested as the final ships moved into formation. "All vessels report ready for combat operations," replied Commander Lisa Park. "Total complement, 312 human warships, 47 Alliance support vessels, and surprisingly, 17 independent ships from species that aren't officially part of either alliance." Cross raised an eyebrow at that last detail. Independent ships, species that have been watching the conflict develop. Word of human military effectiveness has spread beyond alliance space. Some civilizations are apparently interested in seeing how this plays out. The Admiral nodded grimly. Humanity's first major interstellar war was being watched by dozens of species across the galaxy. The outcome would establish precedents that might endure for centuries. Intelligence update on Scoran deployments. Park activated the tactical display showing the core systems of the Scoran Empire. Long-range sensors confirm massive fleet concentrations across 7 star systems. Preliminary estimates suggest they've assembled over 2,000 ships for what they're calling the final hunt. Cross studied the enemy positions with professional interest. The Scorans had apparently decided to stake everything on one massive confrontation, gathering their scattered forces into overwhelming concentrations designed to crush any opposition through sheer numbers. It was exactly the kind of tactical thinking that had gotten them into trouble with humans in the first place. "They still don't understand," Cross murmured. "They think this is about winning battles." "Ma'am, Commander, the Scorans are still treating this like a competition. They want to prove they can defeat us in glorious combat. What they don't realize is that humans don't fight battles. We fight wars, and we fight to win them permanently." Cross activated the fleet communication system and addressed the combined force under her command. The transmission reached not only human and Alliance vessels, but the independent observers who had come to witness what might be the most important military engagement in galactic history. All ships. This is Admiral Cross. In approximately 6 hours, we will engage the full military might of the Scoran Empire. They have chosen to concentrate their forces in an attempt to overwhelm us through numerical superiority. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of human military doctrine. She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. The Scorans believe they are fighting for entertainment and glory. They are wrong. We are not here to provide them with amusement. We are here to eliminate a threat to galactic civilization. When this operation concludes, the Scoran Empire will no longer exist as a military force. Not defeated, not contained, not redirected, eliminated. Cross looked around the bridge at her crew, seeing the same cold determination she felt reflected in their faces. Human vessels will implement Protocol Omega across all target systems simultaneously. Alliance vessels will provide search and rescue for any survivors. Independent observers are advised to maintain safe distances and document what they witness for their respective governments. The transmission ended, leaving the combined fleet in relative silence as crews made final preparations for what many understood might be the most decisive battle in galactic history. High Protector Mellon monitored the human preparations from her flagship, struggling to process the implications of what she was witnessing. Alliance xenobiologists had spent weeks trying to understand human military psychology, but they kept reaching conclusions that challenged everything Alliance civilization believed about the nature of warfare. They really intend to destroy the entire Scoran Empire, observed Dr. Keithmore, the Alliance's leading expert on aggressive species behavior, not occupy their territory or force political changes, literally eliminate their ability to threaten anyone ever again. Meliner nodded grimly. Human strategic thinking appears to be based on the principle of permanent solution rather than temporary resolution. When they identify a threat, they remove it completely. But the implications, I know Melanor watched human warships maneuvering with the precision of a mechanical process. If humans can eliminate the Scoran Empire in a single operation, what does that say about every other military force in the galaxy? The question hung in the air between them, carrying implications that neither wanted to consider fully. Meanwhile, in the Scoran core systems, Fleet Commander Vexithar reviewed his own tactical preparations with growing excitement. The humans had proven themselves worthy opponents, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The final hunt would be the greatest challenge Scoran warriors had ever faced. Status of all hunting fleets? Vexthar asked his tactical coordinator. 247 vessels across 7 systems, all armed and ready for glorious combat, came the enthusiastic reply. The humans cannot possibly match our numbers, regardless of their technological advantages. BXR's mandibles clicked with anticipation, and our scoring system fully operational. Each captain will be credited for verified kills, based on ship classification and crew complement. The victor of the final hunt will be remembered for all time. The scoring commander studied the tactical displays showing his fleet dispositions with satisfaction. The humans had been efficient in their previous encounters, but efficiency meant nothing against overwhelming numerical superiority. Today would prove that Scoran martial spirit could overcome any technological advantage. Begin the approach, Vexthar ordered. Let the final hunt commence. What happened next redefined galactic understanding of warfare on a fundamental level. The human fleet didn't advance system by system, engaging scoring forces in conventional ship-to-ship combat. Instead, they implemented what their tactical manuals called simultaneous strategic elimination, a coordinated strike designed to destroy enemy capabilities across multiple star systems at exactly the same moment. Admiral Cross watched the EI countdown timer reach 0 and spoke 2 words that ended the Scoran Empire. Execute Omega Cross 7 star systems, human weapons that had never been used in actual combat, demonstrated why Earth's military planners had spent decades preparing for this moment. Gravimetric compression bombs created artificial black holes that consumed entire enemy fleets. Quantum disruption devices destabilized the physical laws holding matter together across volumes of space larger than most planets. But the most devastating weapons were the ones that attacked the very concept of Scoran civilization. Mimetic warfare systems broadcast information patterns designed to disrupt Scoran neural functions. Biological agents, specifically tailored to Scoran physiology, rendered their life support systems useless. Cultural viruses introduced through captured communication networks undermined their social structures at the most basic level. Time to completion? Cross asked, as she monitored the systematic destruction of an empire. 17 minutes for primary target elimination, Park reported. An additional 6 hours for complete infrastructure sterilization. Cross nodded, watching tactical displays that showed red enemy contacts disappearing faster than her computers could update their positions. The Scoran Empire's 2,000 ships were being eliminated at a rate that suggested humanity had been deliberately restraining itself during previous engagements. Any survivors requesting surrender? Negative, ma'am. Protocol Omega doesn't provide for surrender options. Cross felt no satisfaction in the destruction she was orchestrating. This wasn't a victory to be celebrated. It was a problem being solved with industrial efficiency. High Protector Mel Honor watched the elimination of the Scoran Empire from her position in the outer system, her crystalline features reflecting disbelief at the scale and speed of human military operations. "Is this really happening?" asked Dr. Keith Moore, as they observed entire star systems being systematically cleared of scorn and presence. "It appears that humans have been preparing for total warfare scenarios that most species never consider," Milana replied quietly. "They didn't just develop weapons to fight enemies. They developed methods to eliminate the concept of those enemies entirely. The destruction was so complete and so rapid that Alliance monitoring systems struggled to keep track of what was happening. Scoran fleets that had existed moments before simply stopped existing. Not destroyed in conventional terms, but removed from reality through weapons that operated on principles most species had never imagined." "How is this level of destruction even possible?" Keith Moore asked. "Because humans approach warfare as an engineering problem rather than a social interaction." Meliner realized they don't fight to defeat enemies. They fight to eliminate categories of threats. When the 17 minutes had elapsed, Admiral Cross received confirmation that primary objectives had been achieved. The Scaran Empire's military capability had been reduced to 0. Their infrastructure had been eliminated. Their ability to threaten any other species had been permanently removed. Fleet status Cross requested. Formal complaint. The implications were staggering. Any word from the Alliance Council? High Protector Mel Anor is requesting immediate conference. Priority Alpha classification. Cross activated the communication system and found herself looking at the alien leader who had originally offered Earth protection from galactic threats. The irony was not lost on either of them. "Admiral Cross," Meliner said carefully, "the Alliance Council would like to discuss formal arrangements for ongoing galactic security." "What kind of arrangements?" "We would like to request that Earth assume primary responsibility for military threats to Alliance territory. In exchange, the Alliance would provide technological and humanitarian support for developing civilizations." Cross considered the proposal. It was essentially an admission that the Alliance had been doing things backwards for 2,000 years, trying to provide protection they weren't equipped to deliver while neglecting the areas where they actually excelled. What about oversight? Command authority? Rules of engagement? Melaner's expression suggested she had already considered these questions extensively. "Admiral, after witnessing today's operation, the Alliance Council believes that human military judgment is superior to our own. We would prefer to provide support services while leaving tactical decisions to Earth Command. You're offering us a blank check to police the galaxy. We're acknowledging that humans are better equipped for that responsibility than we are," Melanor corrected. "The Alliance has spent 2 millennia trying to protect civilizations from threats we didn't fully understand. You eliminated one of the greatest threats in galactic history in 17 minutes. Cross looked around her bridge at crew members who had just participated in the most decisive military victory in human history. They had proven that Earth could defend not just itself, but galactic civilization as a whole. "High Protector," Cross said finally, "Earth accepts responsibility for galactic security, but we do things our way. What does that mean?" Cross's smile was the same one humans had worn since their ancestors first picked up sharp sticks to defend their tribes. "It means that when we're protecting something, we don't do it halfway. Any species or organization that threatens innocent civilians will be eliminated quickly, efficiently, and permanently. And peaceful species will be free to pursue whatever goals they choose, knowing that someone is watching to make sure the universe's predators don't interfere. The formal agreement was negotiated over the following weeks, establishing what historians would later call the Terran Protection Compact. Earth assumed military responsibility for galactic security, while the Alliance continued providing technological and humanitarian assistance to developing civilizations. The arrangement worked perfectly for everyone involved. Alliance species could continue their peaceful pursuits without worrying about external threats. Developing civilizations received protection from enemies that could be eliminated, rather than merely contained. And humanity finally had a purpose that matched their particular talents. Admiral Cross stood on the observation deck of the CSV Indomitable 6 months later, watching human patrol fleets deploy to the galaxy's outer regions, where long-range sensors had detected signs of new potential threats. Earth's protection came with a lifetime guarantee, and there was always work to be done. Admiral reported Commander Park, "We're receiving a priority transmission from deep space monitoring stations. Something is approaching from intergalactic space. Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases." Cross smiled as she studied the preliminary data. Whatever was coming would find that the galaxy was under new management that didn't believe in containment or deterrence when innocent lives were at stake. "Alert all patrol fleets," Cross ordered. "Unknown contact approaching galactic perimeter. Assess threat level and respond accordingly." The message that went out on all frequencies throughout the galaxy was simple and direct. "This territory is under Terran protection. State your intentions or withdraw immediately." Most species chose to state their intentions. Those that didn't provided valuable training opportunities for Earth's newest generation of military personnel who learned that the universe was full of problems waiting to be solved. And humans, as always, were very good at solving problems.